Consist of remarks from the chairs, review and approval of the draft report, and then adjournment. So with that, I'll begin with turning over to my co-chair, Mr. Carbone. Do you have any remarks to begin the meeting?
Good morning, everybody. No remarks at this time.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move right to item 3, approval, review and approval of the draft report. I believe each of you received the draft of the report. So I think the intent today, as Al and I discussed, would be to go through it, section by section. While it seems a little daunting, the appendices take up a decent part of that report. So we have a few pages to go through, but if there are edits, suggestions for additions, deletions, those are the things that we want to talk about today. We'll take the consensus of the group and anything that is requested, and then hopefully at the end of this, we'll be in a position to take a vote or consensus on approving this as the report. Okay. So as we do this, do each of you have a copy of the report with you, or do you need me to put it on the screen? Looks like it looks like everybody has a copy with them. So that's great. So what we'll do is we can go through just page by page. I have a copy up on my screen here. If there are any additions, deletions, suggestions of edits, I can make that. I'll make it in red on my screen, and then at the end we'll just review anything that we've edited for final approval. Okay.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes, Craig.
Do you mind putting it up on the screen?
No, I don't mind. We can do that if the group would like to do that. So
Yeah,
I will put it up
actually
here.
a good idea.
Yeah, and then we will go. Let's see if I can do that here. Okay. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So so we'll start with again just the first page, the cover page here. After today, we will put in whatever the date of today, if today is the day that we do ultimately approve this. If you just want to check, I believe your names are spelled correctly here with your the appointment of what you're who you're representing. We just wanted to take a quick look at that. Great. Table of contents, obviously just auto-filled. So we go to the first page. So first section, again, just stating what the purpose of the task force is. This was taken directly out of the Public Act and put into there. And then the next section, what I tried to do, as we drafted this and put it together, what we tried to do is just follow the sequence of what was presented throughout the task force meetings. So the first meeting that we had was presenting the leadership structure and fulfillment of leadership positions by CIAC. So we'll start on this page.
Hey, Glenn.
Yep.
I don't know if you went by it already, but on page 3, when you talk about leadership structure, again, I have some thoughts. I'm not sure where they fit, but I thought it fit there. But if the committee feels they fit better somewhere else, that's fine too. But at the end of that first paragraph where you talk about the changing landscape of youth sports, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, you do mention later on that CIAC is an educationally based program, but I think it would be good to add a sentence to that paragraph that differentiates the difference between educationally based and not educationally based. If someone reads this report who is not well knowledge of athletics and the landscape of athletics, they put us all in the same youth sport category. That's often done, and this is a great opportunity to educate people that we are educationally based, and this is what educationally based athletics means. So I would suggest we put something in there right where you got your cursor flashing, but I'll leave it up to you to wordsmith it, but I think I got I think you understand the gist.
Okay, any objections to adding a sentence in here defining education-based athletics?
Is there a formal like definition of it somewhere that you can use, like maybe
So
from the National
yeah,
Federation or something?
I think what we could use is just what comes from, if it's okay, the CIAC mission statement. So, education-based athletics exist as an extension of the school curriculum to enhance the students' cognitive, physical, social, emotional, and mental well-being.
Yeah, I understand because you have it, like the third paragraph is division of CAS, secure the value of educational base, important component member. I think to Fred's point is that, it's where do you put that? Because it's, I think because we explain it, and I don't know if you want to put your mission statement, in there, and I think that's fine. I understand what Fred's point is. I just want to put it in there where it explain, it does. You're not taking away from CAS and explaining the CAS CIAC, without saying, "Hey, we're not travel sports. We're not, all that."
Well, my point, and again, I'm not sure where it actually belongs, but that is the essence of what CAC is. We're educationally based, as opposed to non-educationally based. The thing is, we mentioned educationally based in this report a couple of times. We've verbalized it, and it's on video, but someone may not understand the differentiation. And I just think, I was thinking right at the end of that paragraph where he talks about the landscape changes, blah, 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 just, the CIAC, is committed to maintaining an educationally based, which is, as Glenn said, an extension of the school day. We have educational standards. We could spend a whole paragraph on it. Obviously, we don't want to get negative on the non, but what's that?
Yeah, I see it.
I agree with Fred. I think actually a definition of education-based athletics should be a sentence before the changing landscape. Like put that first. And then the second sentence would, because we're making a statement that is most important. It's education-based. Let's not say the changing landscape of youth would be, to me, that differentiates the mindset of somebody who operates in the youth mode and not in the education-based mode. Fred is right. Even my own superintendent said, "What is the 10-second definition of education-based athletics?" Because he says, "I hear it so much, but I want the elevator response." So I think it's important to put it in the first paragraph and put it before the opinion-based sentence.
There you go.
That point is very difficult to get across to parents, and that's why it needs to be in here. So many of them are involved in youth sports and AAUs and all that bit, and they think everything blends together, and they don't understand when we have standards and rules, why we have them. So,
right.
Glenn, just from did you take that right from your mission statement? Do you need to reference that? Like,
It's kind of a hodgepodge of our mission statement.
Okay. All right. I just want to,
yeah,
I don't want the, what's it called? The plagiarism police, but I think that's a great sentence, and it adds to the next sentence.
Right. Like we have in our mission statement, enhances students' cognitive, physical, social, emotional well-being. We don't have extension of the school's core values and mission, I don't believe. So it's kind of a mix and match, but we could kind of cite it if you want to and just say, in alignment with, or as stated in CIAC's mission statement, education. So does that look better, Al?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think it's, yeah, just to Fred's and Craig's point. I think it's,
And then you're
Adds
referencing where you got the definition from as well.
yeah.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. So is there anything else on page 3? Or that you feel fits in page 3 or needs to be amended? Okay, we'll move on to page 4, which contains CIAC mission and purpose and the governance structure.
So under governance structure, again, I'm not sure, I'm gonna throw out what I think is missing. And it may not fit there, it may fit somewhere else. You guys, by the way, whoever put this together, it was well done. I just try to remember every question asked and every detail in the bill. So one of the things that was mentioned is that when the CIAC Board of Control is formed, among other organizations, CAD has a role as a consultant, a non-voting consultant, and that is our preference to remain that way. And I think when questions were asked and answered, they need to be reflected in here because they're just going to get asked again. So I'm not sure if it should be in this governance structure or somewhere else, but a quick sentence, it just simply says that the Connecticut Association of Athletic Directors preference is to be non-voting members, as so is all consultants. And I guess we could revisit that again, but the last time it was revisited, that was pointed out that everybody wanted to remain the way they are. And I'll leave it up to you where, and I'll even leave it up to you to the wording. I think you get the gist, so.
So Fred, the paragraph that is actually the first full paragraph on page 5 talks about the CIAC Board of Control.
Right.
So we have
It's in
the
that
elected
section.
members, we have the consultants. We could, before the last sentence, CIAC Board of Control empowers its 27 sport committee. So before that, we could add, that position in from CAD. If that's what, Doug, if, representing the ADs, if you feel that was the express consent of CAD to the task force on that topic, we could add that in.
Mm-hmm. Glenn, can you put it there? Or if I'm looking back at the first paragraph under CAS CIAC governance structure.
Yeah.
Last sentence, CIAC staff members, including the executive director, do not have voting or proposal right. Do we maybe add it on to there? Do we talk
Sure.
to both CAD and maybe even the coaches association? If all three are the same, do we just make that a joint statement?
I don't believe Amanda is on the meeting unless she logged in late. I can't see all of you guys when
I
I'm
don't think so.
sharing my screen here. I don't want to put something in without the coach's representative,
Mhm.
Here to approve that. But if you wanted to add that statement from CAD, I think we can do that. Al, what do you think?
Yeah. Does it fit for there? Does it fit there? That's my only,
No, I'm gonna leave that up to you guys where it fits, but I thought it should be in this section of governance. I didn't see where it may fit anywhere else, but
So I think the 3 places it could go where Doug suggested, at the end of the paragraph there. It can go in the paragraph about the Board of Control because we talk about the consultant groups there. So we could add it into that group, or it can go later in the document, with the section that is specific about CAD, where CAD does their presentation, where we could
that might be best.
make it specifically there.
Yeah, because it's really not only CAD, it's the sports med, it's the trainers, it's the coaches. But it was asked of us during our presentation. I mean, it was at least addressed. So in our CAD summary, you probably can put it there best. That makes sense.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah, I think that in Glenn, and just in, as we reviewed the document first,
Yeah.
I think we have to do in sequential order, the CIAC, because your presentation, it aligns with the appendix 1, then the CAD presentation and the coaches association, because there were specific things and questions that resulted from both. And that, because once you get to the CAD in the coaches association sections, there were a couple questions that I had, with Glenn in terms of explanation, so people understood.
Right.
I'm jumping
So-
way ahead, but maybe on page 12 might be the best spot for it to fit. in the
Yeah,
CAD
so that's
section.
so I'm just bringing that up. So page 12, Connecticut Association of ADs. So add a sentence in here. So Doug, if you just want to make a mental note there, when we get to page 12 here.
Yeah.
That we'll add it in, we'll add it in there. That'll be great. As Al said, I just want to stay in sequential order as much as
Sure.
we can.
Got it.
Okay. Any other thoughts of the governance structure section? So that's page 4 in the beginning of page 5. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the fulfillment of CAS leadership positions. So this is page 5, carrying over to page 6. Any thoughts, suggestions, changes? Okay, so moving along, that brings us to just sequentially of our meetings, this second task force meeting that we had. In that second meeting, we discussed how CIAC receives and resolves complaints filed by CIAC member schools and individuals. So again, the design here was to introduce the kind of the main topics as an introduction to this section, and then take each of those individually into subsections. So we'll start with just kind of the overall introduction of that on page 6. Any changes or comments on that? Okay, moving on to page 7. So this is the eligibility appeals process. I had one suggested change that I wanted to throw out to you. So one of the points as I was reviewing this and looking through it, I didn't see in here where we did speak about under what scenarios student athletes who transfer do not have a sit out period. So so I just added a sentence in to reflect that that discussion that we had, that when athletes transfer either at the start of their sophomore year, or so they can play their freshman year without and then transfer without penalty, or when they make a legal change of address from one town to another, they can transfer without a sit out period. So that was my intent with this language adding in here. This is additional language though, so let me know if any of you have any concerns with that.
Glenn, do you want to mention that in addition, there are 19 exceptions that if any one of granted is also, the sit out period is waived? Or do you want to just?
I think, Fred, that's part of the appeal process, so
Okay,
I think we'd have to list all 19 of those, and we didn't review all 19 of those during the meeting.
okay.
Yeah, or Glenn, I actually like that sentence. Do you want to put just, because I think we've been consistent as we go through about using it, say like an example, a popular example, that,
Sure.
the CIAC, receives is, students when transferring, like transferring from school to member school. So.
Yeah.
Just kind of tee it up a little bit, because it is a popular activity.
Right. So so should I give 2 then now? Should we give an example of transferring at the completion of your freshman year and an example of moving from town to town?
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be probably pretty good. Because this is just a popular, or you need to tee it up with a nice sentence that says a popular example, or a common example that occurs is, and we did talk about that in the remember some questions about that, And I would say it's probably one of the most, popular questions that athletics administrators and principals get,
Excuse me.
Okay, so Al, how's that for in group? So here's the transfer after freshman year. So a student athlete who played freshman soccer at a magnet school may transfer back to his or her home district in the fall of his or her sophomore year and be immediately eligible without a sit out period.
yeah, I think that's a good example. Yep.
Sound good. And then
Thanks.
we want to add one moving from town to town. So
Yeah.
Also, a student athlete may transfer from, should we just put town A, town B?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Does that reflect it there? So student athlete may transfer from town A to town B, recording a legal change of address while living with a legal parent or guardian, and be immediately eligible through his or her high school career. So there's no sit out at any point in their career, as long as there's a legal change of address moving from town A to town B. Good. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so moving on through this section, any other thoughts, questions on eligibility appeals? Okay, so moving on to CIAC sport rule changes as determined at the sport committee level. So the suggestion that I wanted to make in here, I kept going back. What was bothering me about the second paragraph in this section here was specifically the word suggestion. It just didn't reflect what the actual process was. So what I am proposing here is that we just strike out the language in that and just replace it with this language that I think does reflect the process. So CIAC continually receives requests for changes to sport rules. However, any such request is not considered an official CIAC proposal until it is properly vetted by the committee. A request can be denied any further consideration, or if overwhelmingly supported by the committee, can become an official CIAC proposal. And then
Glenn, can we just add a word before, in the first sentence before committee, the respective committee? Because I think we, so they know, because if it's like because we don't say sport committee or sports rules, but they're saying by the respective committee of because it's really the committee of cognizance, so to speak, right?
Glenn, I have a suggestion in this section. I thought I read it, but I went back and I couldn't find it. But right up front of this section, shouldn't we talk about the formation of the committee? The CICS sports committees, which are made up of.
So I think we have that, Fred, in the,
I thought I read it, but
it's up here in page 5. So CIC sport committees responsible. Each sport committee comprises administrators, athletic directors, coaches, gives the number of coaches. All appointed committee members have equal voting rights. So it's in this, it's in the governance structure.
okay. My point is that I'd like to make sure it's noted either again somewhere in here, somewhere there, or somewhere in the CAD section of that each of CAD's consultants on sports committees are active athletic directors, because that was a question asked and answered. And again, the report, I would like to have the report reflected again where it belongs. I leave to you.
Doug, can you just make a note again? We'll add that in the CAD section. I think that was asked there in the CAD report. Great. Any other questions on the rule change? And we have the example of the basketball shot clock as our example here. Okay, hearing no other questions, we'll move on to CIAC bylaw changes. So this was the next section in discussion of how bylaw changes can make. So this is page 9 and the majority of page 10.
I have a suggestion for the very end of that section, bylaw changes. You did a nice job of using the basketball shot clock and the opt-out for 2 things, but a lot was made of the golf proposal. It was mentioned in the media several times. It was mentioned by former Senator Lozano as a bone of contention. I'm not quite sure what the angst was about, but the golf proposal, as we described it, is a tremendous indication of how something that emerged from a sport committee went to a bylaw change, and the process worked. As you recall, you mentioned that there was enough of a majority to vote the original proposal through, which was to move all boys golf to the fall, but it wasn't overwhelming, and the board allowed us to take another look at it, and at the request of CAD, and at the end of the night, we came up with what we currently have, which most schools are taking advantage of and picking the season they want. But it's a good tie-in, and I just think because so much was made of it in the media and whatnot, we should explain it so people get a true indication of how to see. I mean, it just brings so much. I mean, I think I talked about oversight, and we're not CAD and the coaches, the doctors. We're not above the CIAC, but we have oversight authority in a sense that we question when things are going to have an adverse effect, and this was a perfect example. So I'll throw it out to the committee.
I'm going to chime in on that because we talked about it. The golf. I'm not really convinced that that's a great example. I think it was a confusing example, a process where, it's, the sports divided into seasons. And I'm sure if we polled athletic directors and leagues, even the CIAC, it's confusing. To me, that's not. I think that's something that probably could change, over time. So I think you have to leave it to the golf who's on the golf committee. I'm not convinced by that's a great example, because I think it's evolved over time, and that it's a good example of maybe of the process going forward, but I don't know if that's indicative of something, I'm just saying that as a stakeholder, it's confusing. It's confusing to the leagues because we're asking I just think from a perspective of the way decisions are made and the process and who weighs in on it, from that example. But again, I think respectfully though, Fred, is that, when someone who never knows what the CIAC is, reads this example, understands what you had just said of like kind of the oversight and the different people. I don't want to confuse people because again, the average person would say, wait a second, you can go into the fall or the spring, I thought you in one season. Trying to be transparent here.
I don't think we have to give that much detail, but so much was made of it in the media, and I'm not sure why. But when you talk about confusion, let's go back. When the second proposal came forward to split the season, that was thoroughly voted upon and vetted upon by every school. So everybody understands it. You get an option now, by league or whatever. If there's enough schools in your league and half your league, some leagues half the league. Well, I don't think we have to get into all of that. I just think the explanation of there was a proposal to move boys golf to the fall, which had, majority response to favorable, and but it wasn't overwhelmingly, and the CIAC sent it back to. So it's what I'm trying to get at. The common. I think that some of the people may think that the golf proposal was a staff initiative, and they were going to ramrod it through regardless of the vote. And I think the key point is that the vote was in their majority, and if it was a staff initiative, it would have gone through. But the CIAC board and the staff listened to the membership and said, we're not the majority here, but we're enough of them. We're enough of a minority to say this is. It just indicates to me how we don't need any further oversight from anyone else. That when the membership speaks, the CIAC board listens. I guess that's what it's a better example of anything possibly can happen.
Can I chime in for a second? So the reason why there was so much confusion is because in the first proposal, it was rejected. And in most cases, when proposals are rejected, you don't see a second proposal with basically the same language until you get what you want to hear. So that's where the ADs, that was a sticking point for the ADs, because when it goes through all these levels, Connecticut High School Coaches Association, League, Connecticut High School Coaches Association, CAD, it wasn't accepted. So I don't understand why why did we get to the second proposal? That's the confusion. That's
Craig, it was not rejected.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification on that, Craig. The original proposal passed by a small majority. And because it was such a small majority, the CIAC board decided not to pass it statewide, because they saw that while this was passed by the small majority and this was solving one issue, there were also it would also potentially create challenges in other parts of the state if it was passed. So although it had the slight majority approval in the first proposal, the board did not want to create one problem by solving another. So they declined it and sent it back to see if there was another way to solve the original issue, which was the growth of girls golf. And that's where the second proposal came in. But the original one actually did pass by a slight majority.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm thinking in our league, it was overwhelmingly rejected, and obviously we're an outlier. Well, SEC, still got their own, they participate in spring. But, the interesting thing was that I don't know if this was discussed, but now the state's divided, and I don't know if you have a true champion because you don't have the best teams participating in the same season. So,
Well,
yeah,
and you raise an interesting point too, Craig. And again, this is where I think, you're trying to do what's in the best interest of kids. And when you focus on the championship, right, that's what brings us back to the original, statement where we were talking about education-based athletics, because you actually experience yourself, two interesting sides of the spectrum. Because you came from the SEC where, largely it was not of interest to move to the fall, but you now work in the SWC where not only was it passed unanimously, but they were one of the leagues who presented it. So, you have the personal experience of seeing both ends of the, of the issue and the spectrum, from an AD's perspective, here. So it's, like you said, I think what I'm really hearing though is, even in our discussion here is your point, Al. This is probably an example that is best given when there can be dialogue to explain the multiple facets to it. And, putting it in text is probably, is more likely to create confusion than it is to give clarity.
Yeah, Glenn, to your point, the last sentence in that section, the process of sport-specific changes is the same for any sport committee, provides an opportunity for open dialogue and potential to change any aspect of sports governance that is the membership's will. I think that's, to Fred's point, without using that other example. And plus, I think the one example is a good one. But again, I think that represents what the conversation and the dialogue is. So,
yeah.
I'm okay with that. So much was made about it in the media, and Senator Pisano, which I don't even know why he would have an interest in this at all, unless someone put it in his head that there was a problem with this. But I mean, I kept seeing the golf proposal mentioned in statements of criticism of the CIAC, and in fact, it should have been a statement of encouragement to continue doing the right thing for kids. But I still don't know why it was such a bone of contention with people. So I mean, if you were, maybe I was too close to the situation and I sat in every meeting, and but Glenn is absolutely right. I was at the meeting when the board actually had a motion on the table to pass the original proposal, and during discussion, a bunch of us were able to convince the board to hold off. So it's the process works without, and I guess the inference in the paper is we needed some kind of oversight to direct the CIAC to do the right thing, and I think they did the right thing, because at the end of the day, the state would have been split a lot worse if the original proposal went through. As Craig said, his entire league was against it, and the SWC, the entire league was for it. It would have not only that, there was a clear division down the road, down the middle of the road on this issue. So the board took let's step back and take another look at this approach, but we could articulate that. I mean, if we see it in the media again, we're going to have to, if any legislators or whatever have any questions, we need to make sure it's answered. So.
Okay. Fair enough. So Al, I think we kind of leave it as is for now.
yeah, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation on that. So that is the bylaw changes. So now we are on to complaints of alleged violations by CIAC member schools. Pretty short section, but important one. So any thoughts, comments, concerns?
Glenn, would you skip over the alleged the bylaw change, the CIC bylaw changes, we're covered with that one, right?
Yeah, that was the one we were just talking about. Right?
Okay, all right,
So,
yeah, because I was referring back to the page 9 that was in the sport committee. I
Yes,
just want to make
yep.
sure that, yeah. And just for everyone's sake, in that CIC bylaw changes, we, created back to the kind of the message of saying in the middle of that page where it says, understanding there may be circumstances, the CIAC member school principals created an opt-out option, like that, clarified. It's another good example of, to Fred's point where he had said, like, there's the thing of only a few people make it, making the decisions. I think that was a good clarification. There's circumstances, and that CIC member school principals created an opt-out option. That was a really good example. So,
Mhm. Good point. Okay, so hearing no other concerns about the complaints of alleged violations by CIC member school section, we'll move on. The next work of the task force was hearing from CAD, the coaches, and the Coaches Association, and the discussion of the role that leagues, CAD, and the Coaches Association play with the CIAC. So the first section here.
Glenn, just
yep.
one thing it's South hyphen West Conference, not Southwestern. Page 11 or page 11 under the relationship of leagues, member school leagues. Sorry. When you list all the school, South hyphen West.
Go.
Don't want to confuse the SWC with the old Rice and Texas SMU.
There you go. Thank you. And then so the one addition I had here, I realized when I sent this out, so we had the letter from league commissioners, presidents that was sent in, but we were also provided a letter that CAD submitted. So I just added in here and CAD, and I added the CAD letter to Appendix C later. I'll show you. So that's why the and CAD is in red there. Any other changes with the CIAC member school collaboration and oversight? Okay. Hearing none, that brings us to the section of the Connecticut Association of Athletic Directors. So Doug, I know that you have, I think, a few things marked for us to consider adding in here.
Yep. The first thing, Glenn, in that first paragraph, it is affiliated with the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. So the word athletic is missing from there. That's one easy fix.
Okay.
And then we talked about, Fred, you may have to reiterate this, the CAD's position on being a non-voting entity. We thought this might be the best place to put that in here.
Well, actually, I have 3 things to go on here. I'd like to make mention of the consultants on sports committees that we appoint are all active members.
Yep.
Currently, and that it is CAD's preference not have voting privilege. While we vote on all sport committees, it is CAD's preference to not have voting privileges at the Board of Control and remain as a consultant.
Mhm.
I'll let you do that wherever you
Those
want
are
to do
the
it.
two notes that I had here, Glenn, from our conversation earlier.
Yeah. So Fred and Doug, at the end of the last first paragraph here. So we have CAD's collaboration with the CIAC serves to consult, guide, vet, recommend change, and provide oversight to the CIAC, right? So if we add here, all CAD appointed athletic directors to CIAC sport committees are actively serving in the AD role and have full voting rights on the respective sport committee. CAD appoints 2 consultants. Consultants to the CIAC Board of Control. CAD does not wish to have this on the CIAC Board of Control. Does that reflect your thoughts?
Pretty much, yeah.
I just have one question on that, because in terms of the process where we have pages earlier, CAD's not a member of the CIAC, so member schools. So whether you don't wish to have the voting privileges, and I understand that, and we've discussed that, I think in this case, I think we just need to state the obvious and say they do not have voting rights on the Board of Control, because you're not a member school.
I mean, I would rephrase it to say it's our preference. Let's put it this way. If my board voted to request the CIAC to have voting privileges, I have no question that the CIAC board would allow it. We've had this discussion in the past. It is our preference to remain. And I think if we checked with every other group, whether it's SMAC or the trainers or the coaches, they would all say the same thing. I don't want to get into the whole litigation in here, but as I pointed out at the committee meeting, when the CIAC has to adjudicate and sometimes, issue a sanction or whatever, if they end up in court, we're out of it. And that's the way we want it. So we think we have more influence on the board as a consultant than having 1 or 2 votes, because there's 14 principals and our 1 or 2 votes are not going to mean anything. So I think we have more, our message carries more weight as a consultant. So having said that, it's our preference we don't have voting privileges, but it's not like it's been denied. It's our preference. If we're ever requested, I think my board would, well, we did visit with this shortly, and Doug, you could articulate, but no one has expressed an indication to me that we would like to have voting privileges at the CIAC Board Control.
So Doug, do you think that, just what I altered there makes sense for you? So CAD representative stated that it prefers not to have voting rights on the CIAC Board of Control.
Yep, I think that reads fine.
I would suggest one other thing in that second paragraph where it says we were formed or whatever. I know it's in the slides. I don't know if anybody would be able to extrapolate it from the slides, but it's important to me to let people know that CAD is the structure of CAD, having representatives from each league and from each quadrant of the state. In addition to consultants, facilitates a tremendously diverse group and cross section of the membership, and facilitates a tremendous line of communication. So Al, you asked a question on the very last day, and my answer was that the mechanism is there. If someone has a complaint and it doesn't get surfaced to our board, then somebody's not opening their mouth. They certainly have multiple avenues to articulate a concern about CAD or about CIAC or whatever, and get it brought to the forefront. And I think it's got a lot to do with our structure. So,
okay, I have a question about the structure for this, because Glenn and I had a conversation. Just it says, so when we get to the Coaches Association, they articulated their, like, you talk about your Board of Control. So the Board of Control would be, and you could just list the like vice president or however we have president-elect, all that stuff, to 5 people, board of control. So it says you have an executive director, treasurer, secretary, all that stuff. I think that will add to your conversation representing, the, who you in, every league. I think that's, every league has a rep.
Well, that's in the slides, Al.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that, we could look at the slides and just,
I know, but people may not understand the, or reference the slide, but I just think when you talk about CAD, one of the greatest, I think, CAD relies, CIAC relies on CAD a great deal as a vetting tool because we have so much, so many different, we have information from every walk of life in our member schools, whether it be tech schools, city schools, suburban schools, parochial schools. We make sure that we have an equal blend of every kind of member school on our board, and everybody has a voice. So, that's kind of the strength of our structure. I don't know if you just look at a slide, you can understand that. I just think a sentence that says, or the way our board is formed, and the best indication of that is, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we did a self dive and what we were doing. We had a DEI committee, and as a result of that, we recommended and created a BIPOC board member, just representing BIPOC, the people of color and women and whatnot. So that's the other thing. We have a tremendous amount of women on our board. So we get you could look at the slide and you may not understand it, but I just think it's our strength. So one sentence, I think he added it, that works for me. And even if you reference the slide, we're good. And that's the last change I have, I promise.
Yeah. Hey, Glenn, I would say with all leagues and 4 at-large district representatives, if you want to just add that.
Yeah.
All right, so I have the thought down, but my sentence is awful. So we just got to we just got to do a little grammar editing and make this sound right. So
I'd leave that to you. I'm trying to read it. It's so small, but
so I have the CAD Board of Control is comprised of a diverse representation of athletic directors with members from all 11 leagues and 4 at-large district representatives.
are they all active, Fred, since you've made it clear?
other than the Kenny is our treasurer and myself are the only 2. I believe we're the only 2 retirees. Paul Mengel. Well,
Joe
he's
Monroe.
not. Paul Mengel is he's still employed, but he's a unified consultant. We have him on it. Who else, Doug?
Joe Monroe.
Joe Monroe is in charge of retired AD. So yeah, he's retired. That's true.
Everybody else is active. I'm looking at the list here right now, guys.
Yeah.
Everybody else is active.
Yeah, that's not a requirement, Al. It's
Right.
but we try to. Again, they're voicing, and the people I mentioned, Kenny and Joe Monroe and Paul, myself, I officially can't vote, and those people don't usually vote because they're not in a school. They get a vote, but they don't
So you
usually
can-
vote.
So you could just actually say, Glenn, just saying that the current CAD Board of Control has voting members or whatever, how it is. And then just say CAD staff also consists of an executive director, a treasurer, and what was the other position?
It's well, that's
Retired.
just the officers. The Board of Control is
Right.
everybody.
Right.
The Board of Control is like 29 people. So trust me, I know what it is. I got to feed them, so I know what it costs. So
Yeah. Understand.
the officers are the past president, president-elect, secretary, treasurer, So.
Okay, so if we could just talk, so I just made this 2 sentences. Does this make sense to you now? CAD Board of Control is comprised of a diverse representation of athletic directors. The current CAD Board of Control's voting members includes representatives from all 11 leagues and 4 at-large district representatives.
Yeah, you got CAD wrong. You got CADD. It should be CAAD. And if you're gonna put all voting members, you might, and its consultants, you might
Yeah.
want to just add and its consultants,
Yeah.
because they all vote as well. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
Al, was there something else? I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that conversation. Was there something in addition to the executive director as staff? that
Yeah, do you want
wanted
to, yeah, actually, you want to put CAD staff also consists of an executive director and treasurer, just so that, people know or whoever, just because in the coach association, it's all listed out, like the positions,
Yeah.
whether they're not, they're AEDs or not,
Well, if you're talking about people getting paid, it would be the executive director, the secretary, and the treasurer.
okay, there you go. That's, it doesn't have to, it doesn't even have to say it, just say secretary and treasurer, yeah. It's consistent with what we have for the CIAC staff in terms of their positions, and then the 3 organizations.
Okay,
I just one thing, Fred, I'm just saying this, and Glenn, CAD was formed in 1977, and that should be the first sentence, or the second sentence, because that's ties into the, that just ties into the whole, what you've said all along. To me, that's the best, a very strong sentence, and then a tease in, then you can explain it. That's just my thought. It should be the first sentence in the section. Doug, you agree with that?
I agree. Yes, Al.
I
okay.
think so.
How does that look?
Yeah, just tease up
That's
everything.
better. It flows better. It's
Yeah.
chronological.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Hearing nothing else, we move on to the High School Coaches Association. Any recommended changes there?
Well, they're not here. I did talk to Amanda yesterday, and she said she read the report and it was well done. So I don't know that they had any changes, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they have a good explanation. It's consistent with the titles and the, and again, just the voting rights, consulting, and then, what they do.
Yep. Okay. So hearing none brings us to the page. So and just for reference purposes, so the terms, accommodations, and recommendations were taken from the language used in NIASC reports. So just didn't have a better term for that. But if somebody has a term that they like better here in this section, certainly open to that as well. As we go through them, one thing I'll point out that I did want to take a look at with you guys. I didn't think this bullet point, this bullet point, CIAC should consider that sport committee chairs are active in CIAC. I don't think it covers what we're trying to, say. I think, and I think, Craig, that was one of your points. So I was trying to capture your thought that, committee chairs should be active. Would it make sense? So our committee chairs are, building and district leaders. So would it make sense to say the CIAC should consider that sport committee chairs are active CIAC school and district leaders?
Yeah, I guess my point was that we want to grow leadership within the organization, especially we have so many young athletic directors. And, for lack of better words, we have to give them opportunities. We have to throw them in the fire, so to speak, and let them lead by having the ADs that are veteran and they add value, but they've already had their shot at it. So it's really the turn, I think, of active. And I would try to get as many young, guys with 5 years experience to take on those roles.
Okay.
So I like your sentence.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Glenn, I'm going back. Is accommodations the right word, or should it be commendations instead of accommodations?
Commendations could be.
Yeah. It's commendation. Yep. With the E. COMME.
END.
On this CIAC. For you.
There we go. That makes more sense. Thank you, guys.
Could you scroll down to recommendations one more time?
Sure can, sorry. Al, this should be to the General Assembly here, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Capitalized, general and G&A.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts, changes? Okay.
The only thing, Glenn, I was thinking is on the first bullet, you should consider making an annual presentation to the General Assembly to update. That this is a lot of work. Do you want to say something to the effect that any changes that the organization makes, just, amendments, like, I don't know, somewhat keeping them in the loop of any changes to bylaws, guidelines, just so you don't have to, start from scratch on an annual basis, or on a when it gets to the point where people feel frustrated and then go to their local legislators and say, hey, these things are in other words, like more of an open dialogue. I don't know exactly how to make the recommendation, but I'm thinking along the lines of, if we keep the dialogue open to the General Assembly, then perhaps we don't have to make annual presentations.
Yeah.
I'm just spitballing if somebody has a way of thinking, but
yeah. So the process we have right now, Craig, is at the end of each year when we have our annual meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an annual report with the bylaw changes, rule changes, those things that go out to each of our member school principals because they're voting on it, right? So that annual report exists that every member school principal has access to and can use that at an annual presentation to General Assembly. We can highlight and review on a year-to-year basis what changes were made and where those proposals came from, because I think it's also important to highlight, on the annual report, it might not say that, this rule change came from CAT or this bylaw change came from, the SCC. But we can highlight those things for the General Assembly. From my experience just day to day, so I can tell you, when this meeting is over, I have a state rep to return a phone call, to talk about something. So we do engage very regularly with our legislators, our state reps, and our senators. I think what would be important in recommending the annual presentation is for those legislators that don't have a reason during the year to reach out to us, they, if they don't have a constituent that comes to them with an issue, then there's not really a need for them to, to have the conversation with us. And having that annual presentation at least gives those people an opportunity to have some dialogue with us and learn those things, even if it's not something particularly important for them at the time. That's the thought behind it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially since
Yeah,
somebody-
yeah, Glenn, and I agree with that. And Craig, I think your point's a good one. And I think that's why just keeping it general with an annual presentation, again, we can, as we talked about examples, that's the dialogue to do that once a year. Knowing that full well, it's never a perfect time. And Glenn and I had this conversation a couple of days ago. It's never a perfect time, because it's a part-time legislature, you want the room, but giving that annual opportunity will be all encompassing and highlights.
Plus, if we do that annual meeting, and Al, your role within that world might help us understand this, but if it's recorded on CTN, then now that lives as an archive, right? So even if a legislator can't make it, it's an archived place that they can go on an annual basis to view that or hear that update, right?
Correct. Yeah. And again, just like this meeting is going to be, archived, and, it's the intent and the openness and transparency is there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Good points. And thanks for the conversation, Craig. The rest of these I think are pretty clear. So Appendix A was just the presentation that was given in the first meeting. I think that, that kind of is what it is. Appendix B, the presentation that was given in the second meeting. In Appendix C, there was one addition here. So again, the CAD letter was not in the original. So the CAD letter was inserted here in Appendix C. So that is a change from the document you have. And then Appendix D was the CAD presentation that was given, and Appendix, it's here somewhere, E is the Coaches Association presentation. Okay. Any questions on this?
Should we make a motion to accept the changes, Glenn? So I'll make a motion to accept the changes that we discussed today for the task force report.
Okay, so we have a motion from Al to, so Al, is that a motion to approve the report as final with the changes made today?
Correct.
Okay, and Craig, did I see you second that? Okay, so I have a second from Craig, and Amanda, welcome. So just before we vote, so we have a motion and a second, so we're open for discussion. So just want to fill Amanda in. Amanda, we went through the documents just to look at any changes that needed to be made. So I'll give you a quick overview. We made one change in the leadership structure and fulfillment. We added a sentence. Actually, hold on one second. I'll share my screen here just to show you the changes quick. Just want to make sure that all task force members have seen it. So just one change here defining what education-based athletics is. Okay. The next change that we made in the document was here on page 7 under the eligibility appeals. We added an example, Amanda, of when a student athlete transfers after their sophomore year. So we gave an example of transferring from a magnet school back to your home school. There's no sit out period, and made an example that if you transfer from town A, town B, record a legal change of address with no, with a legal parent or guardian. There's also no sit-out. We also changed in the CIAC sport rules, just restructured the sentence of how requests are received. So it's the requested change for the sport rule comes in. It's not considered a proposal until it's properly vetted by the respective committee. And then the request can either be denied, or if supported, can become an official CIAC proposal. The next change was in the oversight, CIAC member school league collaboration and oversight. We inadvertently left out the letter from CAD that came in. So we added the letter from CAD and added that to Appendix C. And then under CAD's CAD sections, we just changed, updated the opening sentence here. And then we added in that CAD appointed athletic directors are actively serving in an AD role, that they have full voting rights on the respective committees. Added that CAD appoints 2 consultants to the Board of Control, and that CAD stated it prefers not to have voting rights on the CIAC board. And then we just added more detail about their board. So it's comprised of diverse representation of ADs, and the voting members currently include representatives for all 11 leagues, for a district, at-large district reps, and its consultants. And we added a secretary and treasurer to the staff of CAD. There were no additions or changes suggested for the High School Coaches Association section. And in accommodations and recommendations, we changed legislators to General Assembly. And in the second to last bullet, just added the language of school and district leaders to that recommendation. Amanda, were there any changes in your review of the document that you felt needed to be amended?
No, looks good. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I think we have everybody up to date again. Are there any further discussion? Okay. So we will, all those in favor of approving the report as proposed, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, so that is unanimous. Okay, and Al, as co-chair, I'll just, before we adjourn, I will just defer to you. Do you have any comments for the group before we adjourn?
Just want to say thanks to everybody. It was a great experience working with all of you. And, again, compliments to my fellow co-chair for his work in, delivering this report as requested by the legislature. So again, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Al. And likewise, just thank you, each of you, for your time, your service and work on the task force. I think we accomplished a lot here, and look forward to presenting this to the education committee, I believe. Alex, is that correct? Yes. Okay. So again, thank you. As Al said, happy holidays, happy New Year.
Happy holiday.
All righty. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you all. Happy holidays to all of you.
Thank
holiday.
you. You are
Thank you for
adjourned.
the opportunity.
Thanks, Alex.